Okay, female writers are actually being honest about how they view men and how they view relationships with men. And of course, because it looks so bad, it exposes female nature in such a bad light. There are women like this. Sorry, what is her name? Uh, Joomi Kim. Joomi Kim claims this is about modern feminism, which it isn't, Kim. This is just women being honest about what they want out of relationships. Okay, let's hear this.
Is modern feminism ruining literature? So, just to be clear,
Just be clear, there is no modern feminism. That's like saying, is there a modern KKK? There isn't. It's the same hate movement that has always been, Kim.
I'm not going to be attacking all of feminism here. I'm all for equal rights for women,
If you're all for equal rights, then you'd be an MRA because women never had fewer rights than men.
and I'm glad that women can vote and own property, things like that. But the
Women could always own properties. The ancient Spartans, the women way back then, thousands of years ago, owned land. So you're just wrong, as usual.
version of feminism that's dominant right
There,
now,
there is no version. It is what it is. It's just that these women are finally just being honest.
that's pursuing something different. I'll get more into what I mean there later, but in a nutshell, I think that today's feminism has basically been about wanting to turn women into men, and that hasn't been good
Oh,
for.
really? So all this negative behavior about the scribe, that's on, you're putting that on us? I don't think so. I don't think so, Kim. This is natural female behavior, and you've got to own this shit.
Women, and it's been corrosive for literature. I'm not saying that all literature is ruined or anything like that. There's still good work being written. I'll say more on that later. But this modern version of feminism, it's a certain warped way of seeing the world that's so prevalent and
Well, I would say not warped, honest.
so deeply embedded in our literature that it's easy to miss, at least until you start looking. I didn't just see this in one or two books by women. These were observations I made after reading lots of contemporary fiction written by women.
Right.
I kept noticing the same nagging patterns, the same sort of irritating undercurrents, this way that women and their situations were being portrayed in fiction, especially by women writers. So, to illustrate what I mean, I'll talk about some specific books and some common themes I've come across
Yeah.
again and again in literature by women. For example, I read this book, All Fours, by Miranda July. I'll tell you a little bit about what I saw in this book, and maybe you can guess what it was that annoyed me about it. So, this book, there was a period of time when I kept seeing this book being promoted everywhere, just like on all the tables at the bookstores. And I
Really? So it's so bad yet it gets so promoted, Kim. Why is it so promoted?
read this book in part because a friend had asked me what I thought of it. Also, I was kind of curious because the author, Miranda July, I liked one of her films many years ago. She's actually more known as a filmmaker, I think. After I read,
Really, yeah. A lot of films are feminist trash. That a lot of films today, in the last 20 years especially, have been feminist man hate.
this book, I wonder whether I'd still like that film today. But anyway, this book is essentially about a woman who's going through a midlife crisis, and she's a semi famous creative who's married and has a kid whose pronouns are they, them. This
By the way, she's not having a midlife crisis. She's simply tired of her man. That's all it is. Midlife crises are for men because men look forward to the future and realize we're going to die someday. That takes awareness.
pretty much describes the author's life, by the way. Anyway, mild spoiler alert. So if you want to read this book, you might want to skip the next few minutes. Basically, the main character ends up cheating on her husband multiple times, actually, and with both men and women. And after she's slept with some woman who, by the way, is this older woman who happened to be the ex lover of this much younger guy that she was having an affair with, it's fine if you don't follow all that. Anyway, after she slept with this,
Yeah, just women sleeping around. Hey, what's important is that the people they're sleeping with are already committed to somebody else. It's the taboo that is so enticing. But more to the point, it's empowerment. It's women's empowerment. This is what it always is. It's like, I'm going to screw with someone who's already promised to another person, who's already promised to another man, right?
Woman. She feels zero guilt about it and thinks, was this the secret to everything? This bodily freedom? It felt intuitive and healthy, as if promiscuity was my birthright as a woman.
Thank you. Thank you for admitting it. This woman is actually voicing most women's internal monologue. Everything is your birthright, and your big focus is sex and being able to do whatever you like whenever you like.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. And I've seen this a bunch of times in books, which is this promotion of the idea that being sexually promiscuous is feminist somehow. Now, I don't think that someone's in
I have nothing against that, by the way. I have nothing against that, Kim. I would love you girls to be promiscuous. That means guys would get some. But this woman isn't just being promiscuous, she's cheating. That's two different things.
evil or unsympathetic person, even if they do cheat or are sexually promiscuous. I mean, I don't approve of lying or cheating on a moral level, but you could still feel sympathetic towards someone or a character who has lied or cheated. For example, in my last video, I mentioned Anna Karenina. In that book, we all know that Anna Karenina has an affair, but you
Right.
can still feel sympathetic towards her. I mean, at least I did. I've also read books about people who were basically sex obsessed and sleeping with anything that moved, and they were sometimes doing things that were either self-destructive or hurtful to others, but you could still sympathize with them as characters. Maybe what made them sympathetic was at least some level of self-awareness of what they were doing, maybe feeling just a tad bit guilty.
Well, there you go. Guilty, she was about to say, guys. I cut it off a little too quick. These female authors have, authors have no guilt. They're psychopaths, and they claim what women actually want. Look, Kim, if I had my way, I'd have a harem of women. I know I can't have that, but I would. But these women, they're going further because they don't want actually a harem of guys. Like my harem, they're not involved with any other man. I don't want to be a cheater. I just want a bunch of women loving me for myself and being turned on by me sexually. These female writers, they're not happy unless they're cheating, unless someone's getting hurt.
For lying or potentially breaking up their families. But in all fours, the main character, a woman, feels no guilt whatsoever about cheating and in fact says that it felt intuitive and healthy. If a man had said something like this, he would be completely unsympathetic in our society. You would think he was just a jackass, or people would call this toxic masculinity. But when a woman does it, it's her birthright. It's her birth.
Oh, there you go. Now you're coming. Hey, you're all for equality of the sexes, but you can see that the sexes aren't equal, Kim, and never been equal. Men have always been unequal to women.
Birthright to act like a psychopath. And by the way, it's not as if this book is satirizing this character or something like that. You're actually meant to agree with the character's sentiments. Anyway, later on in this book, the woman's husband suspects that something is going on, and he asks her about a certain night, asks her if she'd seen someone that night, and she admits that yes, she did. Then he asks, is it going to happen again? She says, yes, it's probably going to happen again. At least she was honest here, but I was a bit taken aback by how blunt she was and just remorseless. And
Not me. To me, it just screams female behavior. Kim, you're the one who lacks awareness and self-awareness. Women in the past only pretended to be monogamous in a time where they got what they wanted from men directly. Now you can get what you want from us indirectly. Right? So the mask is coming off. I can't help it. You don't like what you see.
it's not as if this married couple didn't love each other. Earlier in the book, before she does any cheating.
No, no, she never loved him. If she loved him, she would never treat him like this. She never loved him. And you know something? The writer needs the male character to love her in return, though. You'll notice that. That's why he doesn't come off as a bad guy. There, if he was just like her, cheating on him wouldn't feel so good. If he was a bad guy who slept around, she would not feel as good about cheating on him. He needs to be a good man. The cheating needs to hurt.
There's this moment when it's clear that their marriage was based on love and companionship.
No, no, you're just wrong. If it was based on that, that would she would never do what she did. He loved her.
Not one of these marriages that were just made from convenience from the start or something. But then later, she's just so nonchalant about lying and cheating. So I just come away feeling like this person is just not a very thoughtful person.
Well, she's a bad person. You can say it. What do you mean thoughtful? Gee, that's not very thoughtful. Sleeping on her around on her husband and telling him right to his face. That's not very thoughtful. No, she's a bad person, Kim.
But actually, she is thoughtful when it comes to certain other things. Like, she's the type of person who's very careful not to commit microaggressions against Black people or trans people. Or
She hates black people, dude. Sorry, Kim. She hates black men. Feminism is a hate movement. It hates men. So all men are affected. So all you're saying is this character was careful to virtue signal that she was a good person while being a bad person.
something like that. But when it comes to her husband, whatever. Anyway, after she tells her husband that yes, it's going to happen again, meaning her sleeping with other people, he asks her to keep it to Wednesdays, which she agrees to. And then he said,
That's actually accurate. Men have zero power in the relationship. Zero. That's why so many men get cucked, as the losers would say. You know, they would shame the guys who are so cucked. But it's either that or end the relationship, right? And a man can't just pick up another woman like that. Well, the woman can pick up another guy like that.
the same rules apply to me, meaning he gets to sleep with other people too. Long story short, he eventually finds a girlfriend. And because he's the monogamous type, I believe that's how he was described in the novel, what ends up happening is that he basically only sleeps with the girlfriend from now on and not his wife. As the wife is realizing this, she thinks, quote, "It wasn't dead between us, but something had to be sacrificed. He needed to feel like a committed, trustworthy boyfriend, and I needed to feel free." So the wife says, "No more sex for us, right?" Just to confirm. "Right," he said. "I think that's over. Are you seeing someone?" Her response,
Then how come we didn't leave the marriage? If this woman was all about freedom, she'd be about his freedom. Hey, you're about equality, Kim, right? He would pick up and leave and say, look, I found this other woman. We don't need to be married. She needs him to be stuck in that marriage. This is the sadism of the writer.
"No, but I will." Now, what struck me here was that
Also, the guy in real life wouldn't be committed. He just can't monkey branch from one woman to the next like she can guys. So when a guy gets a girlfriend who shows him any kind of affection, he gloms onto that one. And he does not let go. She's his new life preserver.
essentially we're witnessing the gradual death of their marriage, but it seems like neither the main character or even the
Oh,
author
no, it wasn't a gradual death. It was an abrupt abandonment by the woman. The wife decided, I had enough of this guy, and it's time to dump him. And when you girls make that decision, you make it all at once, instantly.
seem to realize it. There doesn't seem to be much awareness of the marriage essentially dying. I can't even remember if they
They're
eventually.
aware, they just don't care, Kim. She doesn't care. She never cared about the marriage. The marriage is just there to drain of whatever they want out of the man. Once it's all gone, once they've had enough, they're leaving it. They're completely aware.
Actually separate or not, because the whole thing was just like a non-event, the ending of their marriage, I mean. And okay, so this wasn't the main focus of the book, their marriage, because the main focus was on how this woman was going through a midlife crisis. So fine, that's what the writer chose to focus on with the story. But in my opinion, that just wasn't even interesting enough in the book, at least how she handled it. Because it just basically ends, again, spoiler alert, the book ends with zero consequences for her. It ends with her feeling more free. I think the ending was
It wasn't a midlife crisis then, Kim. This was just an exercise in female dominance on the page. That's why it was recommended. Women love this shit. I got together with this man who I had contempt for, and I jerked him around for years. And no consequences came of it. My life is awesome. Your life is awesome, but you need equality.
horrible and hokey. What I really wanted to see was a bit more reflection about the consequences of all the things she did during her midlife crisis, but no, I guess she just got lucky. There weren't really any, except with her feeling better.
But there were no, in real life, there's often no consequences. In real life, a woman does usually sleep around on a guy and then divorce him and put him through hell and get the kids and get child support and has a new boyfriend. I mean, we see this all the time, Kim, in real life. Like, Kim, you lack awareness.
And their marriage dying a gradual death. But that's not a big deal. And their kid will be fine with it too, I'm sure. And that brings me to a related thing that I
Well,
constantly
the kids don't matter. The kids didn't matter to either parent. When a man says family, he means the wife. That's who he cares about. And for the wife, the kids are just there as tools to help her extract what she wants from the man. I'm sorry, but the older I get, the more this ideal of a loving family looks like a sham to me.
notice in literature nowadays, which is this downplaying of the importance of marriage or even being downright hostile to it. I'll give you another example from a different book. By the way, I'm not seeking books like this out. They just come find me. I just come across them again and again. You're guaranteed to come across these things if you
Thank you for admitting that, Kim, because what you're basically saying is that they're everywhere. So how can they be so all over the place and not be representative of how women actually think and feel?
read contemporary women's literature. So this book, Scaffolding, again, this was another book that I saw being prominently displayed in the bookstores, and it was on lots of lists for best books of the year, things like that. So this novel takes place in Paris. I'm kind of a sucker for books that take place in Paris. Anyway.
Of course you do, because Paris is high status. You're a typical woman, Kim, right?
In this book, one of the main characters, she cheats on her husband. Actually, multiple different women cheat on their partners in this book. One of these women, this is the thought that she has: I am sleeping with a man who is not my husband, and I refuse to feel shamed for it. That's what we've been fighting for: love and sex and bodies without shame.
Then why did they get married, though? None of these women were forced to get married. None of them. They wanted the marriage. So they're not fighting for anything. They're just living a life where they're continuously attacking men that have done nothing to them. This story, by the way you're describing, is just an attack on the male population by women.
And that's what I'm laying claim to. Oof. Again, because women have historically been oppressed, they get
No, they haven't. They have never. You've never been oppressed, ever. It's men who've been oppressed, Kim. It's men that sailed the high seas, that have got shanghaied, like kidnapped off the wharf. It's men that got black lung from working the mines. How many women get black lung right? It's men that went to war. No, no, no. You were never oppressed. I proved that again in my film about Sparta, or not film, my video about Sparta, where the women owned property, they hung around, they ruled, and their men went out to war all the time.
Act like selfish degenerates and screw over their male partners. Got it? It gets even worse. So this woman who was cheating on her husband, her name is Florence. She wants a baby, but her husband is more hesitant. So she decides unilaterally to take action. She stops taking the pill without talking to her husband about it.
Of course, hey, this happens in real life, Kim. You don't like what you're reading? Well, this is happening in real life. Women do this all the time. They lie to their husbands. They say, I'm on the pill, and make sure he doesn't wear a condom. Then they get pregnant by him, right? And the thing is, the man gets to pay for the child. The child is owned by the woman. That is completely unequal relationship. And that's the relationship that we have in real life.
While she's having an affair. So the husband thinks, my wife is having sex with two different men and she chooses this moment to get pregnant. Isn't that a decision we should make together? He asks. It's my body, she says, and I could do what I like with it. The husband.
Thank you. Thank you. So the child isn't a person to her. It's a limb of her body that she could do whatever she wants. But it's a person when she wants to make the man pay for that child. See, it's a person, she says to the court, and she makes him pay child support. But it's just a lump of cells when I want to get rid of it or own it. This is the typical female mindset, Kim.
Says, all right, but it's our life, and if you decide to have a baby with your body, it affects me as well, doesn't it? She says, well, I'm giving you fair warning. You can take whatever steps you like to ensure I don't get pregnant, but I am ready to be a mother, whether or not you are there to do it with me. By the
Yes, she has all the power, and this maps onto reality, Kim. There's no equality between the two sexes. The men are powerless in their relationships with you girls and legally and socially. If you were for equality, you would become a men's rights activist.
way, the husband's not a bad guy. He's not abusive towards her or anything like that. Maybe he's a little clueless about some things, but not a bad guy. Now,
Well, he needs, if I haven't said this already, he needs to be a good guy. What you're reading is sadism. The woman can't just sleep around with random guys. That would gross her out. The man has to be committed to her, and he has to hate it.
if a man had acted like how Florence was acting here, you'd say that he was a total asshole. Also, these characters, again, they're not being satirized. Like when you read these books, it's not that you're supposed to think, wow, these women are totally toxic and out of control. No, it's more like the authors of these books are too busy being feminist or fighting the patriarchy to notice that these women are just awful people. In that,
Yeah, thank you. You admit they're awful people, but they're not feminism is just, hey, what can I say? It's an offshoot of female behavior. So there's no point in blaming feminism. These women are just being honest about how women feel about us guys.
that same book, one of the characters, I forget which one, this is what she says about marriage. I just don't think it's necessary to get married. It's a form of discipline developed to keep society moving along like a big normative machine. You know, you could just see marriage as being a promise to another person that you love. That's it. People get so hung up.
Yeah, but that promise that puts some kind of limits on her behavior. These women are about having control. It's not freedom. Kim, this is not freedom. This is control. If you took these women off and put them on their own island, they would not consider that freedom. They want men working and building a society and them to leech off it.
About it being some kind of backwards tradition or something that society imposes on you. And I get that in the past, women, also a lot of men, didn't have a whole lot of choice in who they married or whether they got married at all. I get that. But in this day and age, in the Western world, women have a choice. And fundamentally, what marriage is just something you choose to do with someone else. And sometimes people formalize it by deciding to have what we call a wedding, where you
Well, they're not formalizing it. That might have been true in the deep past, but in in modern era, in modern times, a wedding is a woman showcasing her privilege and her status. It's it's a squandering of hard-earned wealth by men for a woman to show off her status. It's an exercise in narcissism. Kim, what happens at a typical wedding these days? The man's dressed in servant's clothes. I mean, that's what a tuxedo is. Same as a waiter's clothes. And he's waiting for her. And she makes her grand entrance by herself. She doesn't show up with him. He's not by her side. He's waiting for her. He's the servant. She shows up and the spotlight hits on her. So it's an act of narcissism and a squandering of wealth. And a man's paying for it no matter what. Even if you say it's the bride's parents who pay for it, the bride's parents is the father. The father pays for it.
get everyone you know together so that they witness you making this promise to someone. I think it's a very moving thing. I love weddings. In an era when
Not me. I find it a disgusting waste and a disgusting showcase and display of narcissism, female narcissism. It's disgusting. It's okay to you because you're the one who gets in the spotlight.
don't do these kinds of things very much. Like there's so much exaggerated sentimentality in so many things these days, like in movies and books and in pop songs, but actually very little earnestness when it comes down to it. This is one area where if everybody who made that one promise to someone else, if they actually really tried to keep that promise, the world would be a much better place. A lot better.
But Kim, these books you're critiquing are earnest. They're being they're being honest and earnest in the way that you're not.
Better than if, for example, the government spent more on welfare or something. Anyway, there's a large segment of the population that thinks that being anti-marriage is progressive or even radical somehow. But I find this to be so boring to be.
But they're not anti-marriage, right? They're not anti-marriage. That lie might have worked in the 1960s or even 70s. But women have opted out of marriage for the last 50 years. So, I mean, it's an obvious lie. Feminist women got married. Gloria Steinem, Dworkin, they all had boyfriends. They all had male servants, Kim, working for them. They're not anti-marriage. The writers of these books aren't anti-marriage. They love marriage. They love having a good man being committed to them, a good man that they can make suffer and then discard. You ever heard of Marquis de Sade? Well, he's got nothing on these women.
Anti-marriage this way. Now, if you want to argue that marriage can be tough or that there are some trade-offs associated with it, okay, I can get that. Or if you want to argue that it should have nothing to do with the government, I can certainly get behind that. But
Without the government, there is no marriage. How would you enforce a marriage without government? Without an exterior body to enforce marriage, as soon as someone didn't want to be married, you just get up and leave. I'm sorry, Kim, that's naive.
being against marriage just as a choice, to say that that's feminist somehow, that's just silly. In my last video, I also talked a bit about Sally Rooney's books.
It's silly because they're not against marriage. lie and say that they are. Again, women get married all the time. They love marriage.
In case you don't know, Sally Rooney is one of the most successful literary writers alive today. In her book, Conversations with Friends, one of the characters says that monogamy was there to, quote, serve patrilineal societies by allowing them to pass property to their genetic offspring. I find it so interesting that people
But it also allowed the woman to retire. Like you and I, Kim, might get a pension, but there wasn't pensions for the average peasant 300 years ago, was there? Who took care of you when you became old and decrepit? Your children did. That's why women got married. They wanted children to look after them in their old age, to do work for them, for one thing, because a lot of people were farmers. They wanted children to work on their farm, and then they wanted those children to take care of them when they got old and gray.
just ignore biology these days. Like these people just want to claim that our tendencies or feelings of wanting monogamy or exclusivity with sexual partners are just there to serve patrilineal societies or are purely societal or cultural in nature. But it's clearly biological to a large extent. It's a part of the physio.
Really? Biologically, what does the tigress do? Kim, what does the tigress do? Or the she bear? They get knocked up by a male, then they go about their own business. They live on their own and take care of their cubs. That's part of biology. Do you see how talking about biology is a dead end?
Physiological response to falling in love with someone, wanting for them to only want you and not sleep around. I'm not even saying we were all meant to be 100% monogamous or any.
Also, the other side of the coin is like lions and gorillas, where one gorilla, the biggest and strongest, or lion, beats all the other guys and gets a harem. There's no monogamy. It's one guy gets all the women, and that's it. That's also a part of nature. What makes you think the human animal is monogamous by nature?
Sweeping claims like that, because there are also strong incentives to cheat from an evolutionary standpoint. But I just mean this feeling of wanting exclusivity, it's a normal physiological response you feel to someone you're in love with. You can.
Yeah, but these women, they're not cheating for producing children. These women, they don't want to necessarily get knocked up. One story she did, but even in the story that the woman did, it was really a story about dominance, dominance over their men. That's the core message of that story. The children are neither here nor there.
Complain that it's inconvenient, but it's a real physical response. And there's an evolutionary reason behind it too. It's there, at least in part, because you need.
I didn't realize you were MGTOW, Kim. They always go on about evolutionary psychology and biology. I didn't realize you were making an argument from the MGTOW group, from the manosphere. Kim, are you a manospherian?
Needed the lovers to stick together long enough to take care of the baby because human babies are so expensive in that they take a long time to mature. And they are much more likely to thrive when it's not just one parent taking care of the baby. It's highly advantageous to have both parents around.
Again, women don't need that though. They live off other people's children, right? The machines are doing our work for us. So the baby is just to make the man give her money. Then she kicks the man out because she didn't like him and didn't want to deal with him in the first place. Right? What's the single welfare moms all about? You think they got knocked up by accident? Or a lot of them just said, no, I don't want to work for a living. And the child, being just an object that I own, is a means to an end.
It's especially stupid to me when feminists say that monogamy is just there to serve the patriarchy. This is just a
Patriarchy never existed. It's a matriarchy and always has been. Again, my video on Sparta. Sparta was a matriarchy. The men served the women. The women were the landowners. They didn't have to do anything. They had slaves to do the work, and then they had their other slaves, their husbands, to do the warring. And that's pretty well true for all societies to one degree or other. All societies are a matriarchy. Kim?
denial of biology. Because you can argue that females actually had more to lose in situations that weren't monogamous, at least for most of our evolutionary history. I mean, a woman can get herself in quite the pickle if a man impregnates her and takes off, leaving the burden on her to raise the child alone. Anyway, in all the books I just mentioned, there are multiple parts where the characters are spouting off cliches about how oppressive the patriarchy is. In Sally Rooney's book, there are characters that say that they find masculinity personally oppressive.
Yeah, they hate men. Duh. It's a hate movement. This movement that you are demanding is about equality. You're exposing it for what it is. Now, do you have the self-awareness to understand your own words?
Or F the patriarchy, things like that. In Scaffolding, one of the characters, she's this feminist woman who goes around pasting feminist signs all over the city. How heroic. Here's
That I agree. She has the world by the balls. She has a fantastic life, and this is how she chooses to spend it. Again, she doesn't feed the poor or look after the homeless or do anything altruistic. She just is continually on the attack.
what some of the signs say. Sexism is everywhere, so are we. Is the country of the rights of men afraid of women's rights? Our skirts are short, not our ideas. Queer revolution. Not sure what that has to do with feminism. The revolution.
Well, I do. The feminist, what they do is straight women use gays and queers and trans as attack dogs, as foot soldiers, and shields too. They'll say, oh, we're not just for us, our selfish female interest. We're also for these other guys' interest, these other people who disgust us and will sacrifice in a heartbeat when it's convenient.
Will be feminist. Well done, you have a penis. We are all heroines. No, we're not. We're not all heroines. You don't get to be a heroine just for being a woman. That's just stupid. That's pretty insulting.
Thank you. Wow. Wow. I like that. There. So I'm glad you said it, Kim. Right? You can say it as a woman, though. You can get away with it. I can't because I'm from a lower caste. Remember, we're not equal. We're not equals as the sexes go. You can say these things, and these women might get a little bit upset. I say it, and people want to throw me behind bars. We are not equals.
To women who actually do heroic things. So here's another book that took place in Paris. I'm mostly here to enjoy myself. Like I said, I'm a sucker for books that take place in Paris. This book was also all over the place on the bookstore tables and on all kinds of lists for top best books. In full disclosure, I skimmed a lot of this book. It just didn't hold my interest enough.
Kim, why not Milan or Athens? I mean, all of Europe, they all have their own capitals, every country, and you're only interested in Paris? Or is that's the only thing you've known about? Like it says something about you when you have no interest in geography or cultures.
Have to read it that carefully. By the way, I believe this book is actually a memoir, so I guess most of what happens in it is an account of what the author went through. Anyway, it's about a woman who sublets an apartment in Paris for a while, and it's about her going out with friends and handsome men and walking around Paris and eating great food. And interestingly, it takes place during the lockdowns. That was one of the reasons I was curious about this book. And before I get into how this book relates to modern feminism, I need to talk about that part of the book a bit.
Again, Kim, there's no such thing as modern. It's all the same. I know you're trying to scapegoat someone else. You have to own this shit. Well, I'm not going to let you get away with not owning it.
When she discusses the lockdowns, she writes, during lockdown, I could have written 10 essays about the theft that has been committed on my time and mind by the belief I need to look better, younger, thinner. So as I was reading this sentence, when she started to say the part about a theft having been committed, I thought she was about to say that the theft was the lockdowns themselves. But no, she's talking about the belief or expectations to look younger or better.
No, those expectations don't exist, Kim. This is women wanting to show off their status. Beauty is the ultimate status for women. And these women aren't on top. They don't have to lose. For example, Kim, you're not a loser, right? When it comes to this, in the looks department, you're all right. But this woman is saying it's not enough to be average. I got to be top dog.
just found that to be incredible. How she had nothing to say about how governments and institutions stole our time by physically limiting our freedoms. Like, I know of someone whose mother was dying of cancer in a hospital and they couldn't visit her, okay? Like, it wasn't just time that was stolen from us, but precious things like that. Like being with someone before they died. Anyway, I don't mean to get sidetracked, but this is what was imposed during lockdowns. But the thing that this writer focuses on as having committed theft is this kind of expectation that makes her believe that she needs to be better, younger, thinner. This was the type of thing that I was getting at a bit in my last video. I was complaining about contemporary novels. I said that so many of our writers are in such ideological bubbles that they will focus on certain topics and fail to see even more important ones. This is worse than just finding some annoying woke elements in a book. Like I said in my previous
There is no woke. This is what feminism is.
video, it's not even the annoying wokeness that bothers me so much about a lot of contemporary novels these days. Because I see them and I can just roll my eyes and move on. But the issue is that this
I can't do that. I can't roll my eyes and move on because it affects my life, unlike you. You, Kim, being a woman, you're free to roll your eyes and move on with your life. But these women want my life. They're sadist. And they work politically to strip me of what rights I do have. So I can't do that. I take these monsters seriously.
is the symptom of a much bigger problem, which is that our writers are in ideological bubbles. So they can't see beyond a certain worldview. And
Well, they're actually being honest, I think. I think they're being very honest about how they view the world.
this is the kind of thing that just ruins novels from the start, when the writer just can't even see well. They really don't even have it in them to write an interesting book in the first place. Doesn't matter how pretty or whatever their writing is. Yeah.
Well, they're female. They don't need talent. Kim, what'd you say at the beginning? That these books were pushed to the bestseller list, right? And trumpeted as something women should read. These women, they suck at writing, but they don't need to be good. That's the amazing power and privilege of female, of being female.
I just can't believe how people will keep aping the same things over and over again. Things about how society imposes certain expectations at women, and that's the thing that has stolen your time and mind, not the government literally imposing curfews on people. By the way, in Paris, they had imposed curfews on people. I hadn't known this.
Yeah, but that's gender neutral, right? These women are both fighting men. You can't do it on a gender neutral ground, right?
Until I read this book. Pretty insane stuff. Anyway, getting back to the book. The description of the book says that it's a decadent, joyful, unexpected journey into one woman's pursuit of radical enjoyment. It also says the pursuit of enjoyment is a political act, both a right and a responsibility.
See, this is how this woman, they're saying their privileges It's supposed to be a right. Every woman is a queen. Then what does that make us men? Certainly not kings. I mean, someone has to do the work, right? Someone does have to take responsibility.
This is just so garbled that I don't even know where to begin. But it gives you a window into how so many people think nowadays. I discussed this in one of my previous videos where I talk about the book The Culture of Narcissism by Christopher Lasch. That book discusses this idea that we're living under what he calls the therapeutic sensibility, these kinds of ideas that people just readily accept. It's just like the default assumption that the pursuit of enjoyment is the highest thing that we can strive for. Anyway, getting back to the theme of feminism in literature, or rather a specific type of feminism, these
But these women aren't doing that though. Because even though that character was enjoying her, uh, the height of, I'm screwing it up, but even though she had this great enjoyment where she was going, she was still blaming men and attacking men. Because that's the purpose of the book.
days, I also keep picking up on all these women who keep telling others and themselves that they're powerful or confident. Am I the only one who finds this really annoying at this point? When someone tells me that they're powerful or confident, I actually tend to think the opposite about them. I think that they're insecure, that they have some hang-ups about this. So here are some excerpts from this book related to this. Quote, I have become the very thing we are taught to fear, a woman unafraid of her own desires, freed from the expectation of asking permission to satisfy them even briefly.
Yeah, but again, women always already had that power. Women could, share their bodies around the guys if they wanted to. Guys would accept that. Like I said, that husband in the story, he became a cock. And actually, guys would prefer that. If women just showed interest in us sexually and want to be intimate with us and were able to share us together with them, men would go for that. Matter of fact, it would really decrease on male competition. Men would probably be friendlier to one another if we thought, gee, the woman next door, she's willing to bang both of us.
There's not a shred of shame. 5 years before I can clearly see myself for what I am, powerful and alive and beautiful. I am a confident older woman. Again, if you have to keep saying these things, I kind of don't believe you. A confident person doesn't have to keep saying that they're confident. I think
But I actually believe them because they are powerful. You're part of the upper crust. You know, being female is part of the new nobility. I mean, it always has been. The average woman is now a queen, right? Maybe the peasant woman in the past, she might have had to deal with a lot of heavy labor, still less than her husband, but she had to work. The average woman doesn't have to work like that. The average woman is a queen by all rights and measurements. So that woman, I don't think she's insecure, Kim. I think she's just becoming aware.
it's very telling that this is such an obsession with women these days. Am I the only one noticing this? Like women these days seem to have a hang up about being confident or independent and strong. And this is why I say that modern feminism, the kind of feminism that's most prevalent these days, it seems like it's about
How old are fairy tales? Grimm's fairy tales, like with the glass slippers, right? And the fairy godmother. Women have always dreamed of marrying up and having extreme privilege, always.
trying to turn women into men. That might make it seem like I'm saying confidence or independence or strength are male traits. That's not what I'm saying. So here's what I'm trying
Really? That's what it sounds like to me.
to say. I'm saying that women seem to think that loudly declaring that they're confident or being all blustery or just acting like they don't give a fuck what you think, they think these things are confidence or independence or strength. They're not.
Who says they're acting? And they probably are, it sounds like they are confident to me. I mean, they're saying stuff that's actually true, Kim. Women can marry a guy and sleep around on him and screw around, and they enjoy it. How how is this not true? Right?
Not. That's what I'm saying. And that applies for both men and women, actually.
How does it apply for both of us? Men can't do that. Men can't make a brag like that. A guy can't say, "Well, I slept around on my wife, and when she found out, she just had to take it. She didn't leave me and with the kids. I can just monkey branch to any woman I feel like." And Kim, sorry, but those female writers that you call feminist, they're being a lot more honest than you are.
You can just be confident and independent and strong without calling attention to it. That's it. Speaking of turning women into men, in this book, this woman, she sleeps around.
Stop doing that. These women are not behaving like men, they're behaving like women. Men do not behave like this. So you're proving that you are a feminist, a modern one.
Around quite a bit. This book was not smutty or anything, but she does hook up with a lot of guys. Now, this could be potentially entertaining and interesting whether you're down with her lifestyle or not. But what I didn't like about her descriptions of her as
What do you mean? Like, are you against lifestyle? In other words, you wouldn't sleep around with a bunch of guys? Why not? Kim, why not? What's wrong with you sleeping around with a bunch of guys? I have nothing against it. I kind of enjoy the idea that some guy would be happy. Some guy would find you cute, and a night of intimacy would be great for him. I don't see the problem with that.
escapades is that it didn't feel real to me because it kind of felt like she didn't feel real to me based on what I know about most women. Most women, like I said, are not psychologically built to want lots of casual sex with lots of different men that they hardly know. They usually end up catching feelings and settling on one or maybe two men. I mean, a lot of men too, actually, but women even more so, I think. And again,
No, no. There's been too many violent divorces where men suffer for that. Sorry, reality doesn't match your story, Kim. Your story is bogus.
there are evolutionary reasons for this because a woman doesn't need to be promiscuous to reproduce. Women were the ones who were, at least evolutionarily, choosier when it came to sexual partners because the stakes were higher for them. Because it's a seriously life-changing event if she chooses.
Yeah, well, again, you manispherian. You're just wrong. These women aren't worried about having children. There are abortion parties, Kim. Women fight for their rights to abortion. If they really wanted to have children, if this was all about producing children, one, women wouldn't get abortions, and two, the birth rates would be dropping worldwide. The birth rates are dropping because women aren't interested in having children. So please keep that biological dribble to yourself, to your manispherian self.
Chooses wrongly and sleeps with a man that knocks her up and then abandons her. These are just facts. So women aren't really wired to be satisfied with lots of casual sex with men they barely know. But the woman in this book, it kind of seemed
Well, what wouldn't that be biological? Again, like a bear. When a male bear impregnates a female bear, he just goes on his way. Isn't that biological? The tiger's the same way, right? Doesn't the male tiger impregnate the female, the tigress? During mating season, when the mating season is on, he leaves. He goes on his way. Again, isn't that a part of biology?
like she was painting an overly rosy picture of this lifestyle. She was just enjoying herself. And I just didn't believe her. There was like one moment where she felt like she was getting a bit too attached to this one guy, but it wasn't even that big of a deal. And I just did not find that believable. I'm not necessarily saying that the author of this memoir was lying, at least intentionally. In fact, I think it's possible that the author was actually not being honest with herself. I think a lot of women aren't honest with themselves about this, actually. They
Oh, that's an amazing thing to say. You aren't being honest with yourself. Women might form attachment to men once in a while, but it's usually a very high status man with wealth and or power. And even then, it's very temporary. The loyalty isn't there.
get into casual situations with men and they think they're fine with it, but they're not really. And I think that's because this is maybe seen as a weakness. Women these days see this as a weakness because they think they should be like men. I saw this
No, no, they don't feel like they should be like men. They just don't derive the same pleasure as having sex with men as men have with having sex with you gals. They have an innate contempt for men. They're celebrating having the freedom to do whatever they want, but at the same time, they don't like the people that they're dealing with.
a bit from another angle, actually, but this was in a book that was written by a woman but told from a man's point of view. The book is Fleischman is in Trouble. By the way, full disclosure, I didn't read this whole book. I just read the beginning of this book, and that's the part I'm going to talk about here. Anyway, this book was longlisted for the National Book Award, and like I said, it's written from the point of view of a man, but the author is a woman. So we're
And it was for what award? It got a reward? Either got one or set up for an award. So again, if you're critiquing, if you're saying this is bad writing and it's up for an award, Kim does not, that does not say how much privilege women have. Women fail upward. It's men who have to achieve something real to be accepted by society. And you ladies don't.
reading this from the perspective of a 41-year-old man, and he's newly single, and suddenly realizing that there are all these eligible women who want him. So he's happy about that. This is how it starts. And
That's her projecting female nature on the man, right? That guy has to be very wealthy or no. He's got to have a certain amount of fame, status, before a lot of women would want him.
you tell me if you pick up on something interesting here. Toby Fleischman awoke one morning inside the city he'd lived in all his adult life, and which was suddenly somehow now crawling with women who wanted him. Not just any women, but women who were self actualized and independent and knew what they wanted. Women who weren't needy or insecure or self doubting, like the long ago prospects of his long gone youth. So, what struck me about this first paragraph is that it read to me like it was written by a modern woman. I mean, look at this. There are 5 different ways of basically saying that the women were some version of independent, self actualized, independent, who weren't needy or insecure or self doubting. 5 different ways of basically saying independent or confident. Would a newly single man care so much about the fact that the women he was encountering were so independent that he finds 5 different ways to say this? I mean, look, I'm not a guy, but I would think that the main things a man would bring up would be that these women were attractive or young or fun. When I read this passage,
Yeah, that's true. Hey, I'm glad to see you're getting it.
I felt like it just told you so much about our values and assumptions today. They're so baked in that you could easily not notice it. Now, like I said, I didn't get very far in this book. I don't know if it's any good, but I already don't like how it starts. Also, NPR called it a fictional indictment of interpersonal and systemic sexism. So yeah, I'm probably going to skip this one. Now, I can understand that once women got liberation, you'd have this explosion of literature from women who would write about the patriarchy and all that. And we got a whole bunch of that in the early 20th century, some of which was
And all that was bullshit. Every bit of it. And it was shit writing on top of it. Because you can't make a hate movement sound good. You can't get any depth from a hate movement. The KKK cannot write a riveting book about how they lynch black men. Ergo, your feminist hate movement can't do any better either.
good. But maybe it's time for the women writers to realize that things are legitimately different now. Like maybe patriarchy is really not the main thing plaguing women today.
It never was. It never existed. You see, you think you're not a feminist, but you You have all their talking points. You tell the same lies, Kim, the same bullshit.
Instead, we get entire subgenres of books that are what's called female rage books. Basically, these are books about the anger of women. She's angry at the world or the patriarchy. So many women are acting like women only got liberated yesterday, or actually worse than that, that women aren't liberated.
These women aren't angry, though. They're just hostile. No, a rabid dog isn't angry. He just wants to hurt someone.
And they're still massively oppressed, and hence it's still considered rebellious or revolutionary to write up the patriarchy. When
And women were never oppressed. In the past, they had limitations on their behavior, and the men had even more on theirs. That's the way life was in the past. Because women couldn't do whatever they wanted, they called it oppression.
corporations are the ones spouting the feminist slogans and using it to sell products, maybe it's time to consider that it's no longer that revolutionary. Also, some industries have become totally
Hatred was never revolutionary.
dominated by women, like publishing. Most of the people deciding what gets published are women. Also, most of the people in the MFA programs, I hear. So these are the programs for studying to become writers. And in general, in all different kinds of industries, there's actually been campaigns to try to hire more women to the point where men are being actively discriminated against.
Yeah. Yeah, the sexes aren't equal. Men are of the lower caste and always have been. And in spite of you gals being in 100% control, you didn't produce anything of nothing worthwhile.
I'm talking about DEI initiatives and things like that. So I've heard it's actually harder for men to get published these days, especially.
DEI is just against men. Once in a while, they might include a minority, but that minority person will be female most of the time. And usually goes to white women. Kim, are you a white woman? Not with a name like Kim. You should notice how many white women dominate. They're actually the majority. And yet, just by being female, they get minority status, top minority status. A white woman is above you, Kim. She gets first dibs in DEI. Nothing says diverse like excluding 50% of the population.
Straight white men. Several years ago, the writer Joyce Carol Oates tweeted this. A friend who is a literary agent told me that he cannot even get editors to read first novels by young white male writers, no matter how good. They are just not interested. Maybe this is why men aren't reading.
It's not a lack of interest, it's hostility. And this has nothing to do with being straight. I don't see too many gay male authors being trumpeted by you girls.
As much fiction these days. By the way, I'll probably make a video related to this, maybe, about how men are apparently not as into fiction these days. Anyway, I just think people should be published based on merit. Now, all this is not to say that there aren't certain types of problems that women experience more than men, or that
No, you don't. You don't have any problems. The only problem you might have is dealing with your sex genitalia, like maybe ovarian cancer or breast cancer. Other than that, you have zero problems. All your problems is gender neutral, and men suffer more from it. What we got left? 2 minutes? No, I said what I need to say. Kim, you embarrassed yourself. What's your first name anyway? Joomi? I'll just stick with Kim. Kim, you embarrassed yourself. You are a feminist. You are exactly one of these people you were griping about. And these women were actually honest in the way you never could be. They're all honest about their female dominance over and sadism towards the male gender. You can't even admit that. End of story.